This is the story of a humble farmhand who spent his life serving others, only to find himself fighting for something others considered worthless, and of a dying animal that God used to reveal what was really inside each heart. Samuel wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished mucking out the last stall in Blackwell's expansive barn. The ranch was one of the largest in the county, with fields stretching toward the mountains and cattle that brought in more money than Samuel would see in 3 lifetimes. He had worked here for almost 15 years now, grateful for the steady pay that helped support his modest life in the small cabin at the edge of the property. "Torres, get over here!" The sharp voice of Richard Blackwell cut through the peaceful morning. Samuel set down his pitchfork and hurried across the yard, his worn boots kicking up dust. "Yes, Mr. Blackwell?" Samuel removed his straw hat respectfully. Blackwell stood by the small pen behind the barn, pointing disgustedly at an old gray donkey lying in the corner. The animal's sides heaved with labored breathing. "That useless animal is taking up space and feed," Blackwell spat. "I bought a new tractor last month, so we don't need pack animals anymore. I'm having it put down this afternoon." Samuel looked at the donkey, noticing its gentle eyes and the way it struggled to lift its head. Something in those eyes reminded him of his late wife's gaze in her final days, patient, accepting, yet still full of life. "Sir, if I may?" Samuel hesitated. "That donkey still has some years left. Maybe just needs some care." Blackwell laughed coldly. "Always the soft heart, Torres. That's why you'll die poor. Business is business. That animal costs more to feed than it's worth." Samuel stood silently, hat in hand, as Blackwell turned to walk away. Then, surprising even himself, he called out, "I'd like to buy it, sir." Blackwell turned, eyebrows raised in mockery. "You? Buy it? With what money, Torres?" The other ranch hands nearby stopped their work, watching the exchange with uncomfortable expressions. Samuel felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but stood his ground. "I have some savings, sir. Not much, but enough. Please." For a long moment, Blackwell studied his longtime employee. Then a cruel smile spread across his face. "Fine. $200, and you can have this walking carcass." Samuel's heart sank. $200 was nearly a month's wages for him. Money he had been saving for a new roof on his cabin. But looking at the donkey's eyes, he couldn't walk away. "I'll pay it," he said quietly. The ranch hands exchanged glances. One of them, Miguel, whispered loudly enough for all to hear. The old man's finally lost his mind, paying good money for meat for the vultures. Laughter rippled through the group, and Samuel felt the sting of their ridicule as he counted out the bills from his worn wallet. Blackwell took the money with an amused smirk. "The animal is yours, along with whatever diseases it's carrying. Get it off my property by sundown." As Samuel approached the pen, the donkey struggled to its feet, swaying unsteadily. Up close, Samuel could see patches of missing fur, sores on its legs, and the pronounced outline of its ribs. What had he done? Was this act of mercy just foolishness, as everyone clearly thought? And you? Have you ever felt like your compassion was mocked by others who couldn't understand? If you have, type the word mercy in the comments, so you never forget that kindness is never wasted, even when the world calls it foolish. Leading the donkey home was painfully slow. Each step seemed to cost the animal great effort, and several times Samuel wondered if it would collapse on the dirt road. The mile-long walk to his cabin took nearly 2 hours. By the time they arrived, darkness was falling, and Samuel's doubts were growing. The donkey looked even worse in the fading light, trembling with exhaustion. "What am I going to do with you?" Samuel whispered, guiding the animal to the small lean-to beside his cabin. "I can barely feed myself some months." That night, Samuel struggled to sleep. The money he'd spent represented months of careful saving. His roof still leaked, and winter wasn't far off. Had he thrown away his security for an animal that might not survive the week? "Lord," he prayed in the darkness, "did I do wrong? Was this just pride, trying to show kindness when I can't afford it? Or were you guiding my heart?" The next morning, Samuel rose before dawn as usual. His first thought was of the donkey, and he hurried outside, half expecting to find it had died in the night. Instead, the animal was standing, watching him with those soulful eyes. "Well, old fellow," Samuel said softly, "let's see what we can do for you." Samuel named the donkey Lazarus. "Because you looked about as dead as a creature could be," he told the animal as he brushed its matted coat. Each day, Samuel shared his meager resources with Lazarus. He mixed molasses with the donkey's feed to encourage it to eat, cleaned its sores with careful hands, and spoke gently to it during the long evenings. Word spread quickly through the small community about Samuel's foolish purchase. When he went into town for supplies, he heard the whispers and saw the smirks. That old man spent his roof money on Blackwell's dying donkey. Must be getting senile. Animal won't last a month. Always was too soft-hearted for his own good. If this story is speaking to you so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, so you don't miss the next stories just like it. Even the local pastor approached him after Sunday service. "Samuel, my friend, your kindness is admirable, but sometimes we must be practical. That money could have fixed your roof before winter." Samuel just nodded politely. He couldn't explain the connection he felt to the donkey, how caring for something weaker than himself filled an emptiness he'd carried since his wife's passing 5 years ago. Weeks passed, and gradually, Lazarus began to improve. His coat grew shinier, his eyes brighter. He began to bray softly when he heard Samuel's footsteps in the morning. The sores healed, and though the donkey remained thin, its strength was returning. Samuel would sit on an upturned bucket in the evenings, telling Lazarus about his day while the donkey listened, ears twitching attentively. "You're good company, old fellow," Samuel would say. "Don't mind what they think. We understand each other, don't we?" One afternoon, as fall was turning the countryside golden, Richard Blackwell drove his expensive truck up to Samuel's modest cabin. He stepped out, wrinkling his nose at the simplicity of the old man's dwelling. "Torres," he called, "I've come to check if that donkey finally died." Samuel emerged from the lean-to, wiping his hands on a rag. "No, sir. Lazarus is doing just fine." Blackwell scoffed, then peered past Samuel to where the donkey stood. His expression changed to one of surprise. The animal, while still thin, looked remarkably improved. Alert, with a cleaner coat and clear eyes. "Well," Blackwell said, recovering quickly, "lucky for you. Though I still say it was a waste of good money." As he turned to leave, he added casually, "By the way, the county fair is next week. They're having that pack animal obstacle course contest again. 20 horses and donkeys already registered. First prize is $5,000. He laughed. "Not that you'd be interested." After Blackwell left, Samuel stood thinking. $5,000 would fix his roof with plenty left over. But Lazarus was still recovering, nowhere near strong enough for a competition against healthy animals. "That would be asking too much of you," Samuel told the donkey, stroking its nose. "We'll find another way." But that night, as rain found the weak spots in his roof and dripped into the buckets he'd placed around his small home, Samuel reconsidered. What did they have to lose? Even if they came in last, which seemed likely, it would be a day out together. The morning of the fair arrived crisp and clear. Samuel had spent hours the previous day brushing Lazarus until his coat shone, and fashioning a simple but clean halter from rope he'd dyed blue. It wasn't fancy like the leather tack the other competitors would have, but it was dignified. When they arrived at the fairgrounds, the reactions were immediate. Laughter and pointing followed them as Samuel led Lazarus to the registration table. "Is this some kind of joke?" asked the woman taking entries. "This is a serious competition, sir." "We're serious competitors," Samuel replied quietly. "Here's my entry fee." From a nearby stall, Richard Blackwell emerged, leading a handsome chestnut horse. When he spotted Samuel and Lazarus, he burst into laughter. "Torres, you actually brought that walking skeleton to compete? This is too good." He called to the other competitors, "Hey everyone, come see what my ranch hand thinks is a show animal." A crowd gathered, and the mockery continued. Samuel stood straight, one hand resting protectively on Lazarus's neck. The donkey seemed to sense his distress and leaned gently against him. "The obstacle course requires strength and training," Blackwell announced to the onlookers. "That creature can barely walk across the field." Samuel felt his resolve weakening under the weight of their ridicule. Maybe this had been a mistake. He turned to lead Lazarus away when an elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd. "Let them compete," she said firmly. "The rules don't say anything about the condition of the animal, just that they complete the course." She turned to Samuel with kind eyes. "I'm Eleanor Jenkins, one of the judges. Every entry deserves a fair chance." The competition began with the more impressive animals going first. Powerful horses and sturdy mules navigated the course of bridges, narrow pathways, and barriers with varying degrees of success. Some refused certain obstacles, others completed the course quickly, but knocked over barriers. When Samuel and Lazarus's turn came, a hush fell over the crowd, anticipating failure. Samuel leaned close to the donkey's ear. "Just do your best, old friend," he whispered. "That's all anyone can ask." They began slowly, approaching the first obstacle, a narrow bridge over a water trough. Lazarus hesitated, then carefully placed one hoof in front of the other. The crowd watched in silence as the pair moved methodically through each challenge. What Lazarus lacked in speed, he made up for in careful precision. He followed Samuel's gentle guidance with complete trust, never rushing, never balking. When they finally completed the course, the only pair to knock over no barriers, there was a moment of stunned silence before scattered applause broke out. "Time is a factor," Blackwell called out loudly. "They took twice as long as anyone else." But Judge Eleanor stepped forward, consulting her clipboard. "According to our rules, accuracy counts more than speed. Penalties for knocked barriers are significant." She looked up, meeting Samuel's eyes. "We'll announce the results shortly." The judges conferred for nearly 20 minutes while the competitors and spectators waited. Samuel stood quietly with Lazarus, stroking the donkey's neck and whispering words of praise, regardless of the outcome. Finally, Eleanor approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have our results. This year's obstacle course champion is..." She paused, smiling. "Samuel Torres and Lazarus." A moment of shocked silence was followed by confused murmuring, and then, gradually, applause. Samuel stood frozen, unable to believe what he'd heard. "But that's impossible." Blackwell pushed through the crowd, face flushed with anger. "That's the same worthless donkey I sold him months ago. It was practically dead." Eleanor turned to him coolly. "Then it appears Mr. Torres has performed quite a miracle, Mr. Blackwell." The judge's decision is unanimous. As Samuel led Lazarus to receive their ribbon and prize money, he felt a lump in his throat. The donkey that everyone had written off as worthless had just proved them all wrong. Blackwell approached him afterward, his expression unreadable. "I'll give you $2,000 for that donkey right now," he said. "That's 10 times what you paid." Samuel looked at the man who had mocked him and Lazarus for months, then at the donkey who had become his faithful companion. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell, but Lazarus isn't for sale. Not for any price." As word of their victory spread through the community, attitudes began to change. The same people who had ridiculed Samuel now approached him for advice on caring for their own animals. Children would stop by his cabin to visit Lazarus, bringing carrots and apples as treats. Samuel used the prize money to repair his roof and build a proper small barn for Lazarus. He even had enough left over to quit his job at Blackwell's ranch and start a small business rehabilitating neglected farm animals. One winter evening, as snow fell softly outside, Samuel sat in his warm cabin reading his Bible. A knock at the door surprised him. Opening it, he found Richard Blackwell standing uncertainly on his porch. "Torres," Blackwell began awkwardly, "I've come to ask. The new donkey I bought isn't doing well. The vet says it might not make it. I wondered if you could take a look." Samuel studied his former employer's face, no longer arrogant, but worried and humbled. "Of course I will," Samuel said simply. "Let me get my coat." As they walked to Blackwell's truck, the wealthy rancher cleared his throat. "I was wrong about that donkey. And about you, Torres. I valued the wrong things." Samuel nodded, understanding the difficult admission. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Blackwell. The important thing is learning from them." Years passed, and Samuel's small animal rehabilitation center became known throughout the county. Farmers and ranchers brought their sick or injured animals to him, and his gentle methods saved many that others would have given up on. Lazarus remained by his side, healthy and strong, a living testament to the power of patience and care. Children who visited would hear the story of how the donkey that was deemed worthless became a champion, teaching them that value isn't always visible at first glance. On Samuel's 70th birthday, the community gathered at his place for a celebration. Even Richard Blackwell came, bringing a hand-carved walking stick as a gift. As Samuel looked around at the faces, people whose lives he and Lazarus had touched in some way, he felt a deep contentment. Later that evening, as the guests departed, Samuel sat on his porch with Lazarus standing nearby. The donkey's muzzle had grayed with age, but his eyes still held the same gentle spirit. "You know, old friend," Samuel said softly, "they all came to celebrate my birthday. But the truth is, you're the one who changed everything. You taught me that sometimes the greatest value lies in what others throw away. Never forget this. What appears worthless to the world may be priceless in God's eyes." The animal that was destined for destruction became the instrument of blessing. The compassion that seemed foolish to others was wisdom in disguise. When you choose mercy over judgment, you open the door for God's purposes to unfold in ways no one could have imagined. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth today. Save this video to listen again on the days when the world makes you question the value of compassion and kindness.